So, hi everyone, my name is Jessica, and today I'm going to be presenting about arson. So, my first slide is just a little funny quote that I found by H.G. Wells. Arson, after all, is an artificial crime. A large number of houses deserve to be burnt. It kind of gave me a chuckle. So, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, arson is defined as the following: any willful or malicious burning or attempt to burn with or without intent to defraud a dwelling, house, public building, motor vehicle, aircraft, personal property, or anything else, etc. So, 86% of arsonists are male, and I found it interesting that half of all intentionally set fires are done so by children. So arson can be committed for a lot of different reasons, to collect insurance money, to cover up a crime, etc. So in this presentation, I'm going to dive into some of these reasons and cover a lot of different aspects of arson. So types of arson. So there's several different types of arson. The first would be revenge, and that would be when someone actually commits a crime to get revenge against someone else or retaliation for something. Then we have vandalism, and that is done just as an actual act to vandalize a property or a specific target or victim. We have insurance fraud. That's a very common one. And according to the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud, they reported in 2022 that about 10% of property casualty insurance losses are from fraud. And that's just what they can prove. And then you have pyromania, and that's actually considered like a type of mental health disorder. And it's when where a person is actually compelled to start a fire. We have domestic arson, and this is when someone starts a fire a part of a domestic dispute. And political arson, and this would be when this is like a form of protest or during a riot, etc. And then a newer one that I think it should be mentioned that I didn't really find in any textbooks, but I've heard about this is wildfire arson. Like right now, there's been a lot of fires in the Pacific Northwest, and I've heard rumors personally. I do a lot of hiking and backpacking that a lot of the fires have been set intentionally because the logging companies want to be able to log the national forest and they cannot do so unless there's a fire. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know all the facts about that, but food for thought. And then another big one is, to conceal a crime. And I would say that probably, something like homicide would be something that, would be concealed through arson. So, next, I want to talk about what society's responses are to arson. There's a lot of long term and short term measures to prevent, investigate, punish arson. The first would be, dispatch emergency services like firefighters, EMTs, and then contain the fire and, protect the public. Next, we talk about investigation and prosecution. Oops, excuse me. Um, so we're talking about a formal investigation. Law enforcement will work to identify and prosecute suspects. um, Fire prevention. This is done by like building codes, fire alarms, sprinkler systems, uh, different types of inspections done by firemen or law enforcement or the state. um, Also, specific building codes to help prevent arson and fires. Public education and actually, let me backtrack. Victim support services, excuse me. This would include support for property owners, people that lost a loved one in a fire, and also first responders that are involved in fires. And this would go for like, you know, financial assistance and legal resources, and maybe even like therapy and stuff like that. Public education is really important. Spread awareness, campaigns to spread awareness for about the dangers of arson, and provide proper safety practices and reporting suspicious activities. Um, so, what are some of the legal ramifications? Arson is a very serious offense and it's punishable by a large range of penalties. And this would go for like legal. You could be in prison for a few years to life, and even the death penalty if there were death involved. Um, Probation and parole, and that could include things like court order treatment, psychological treatment, and therapy. Financial ramifications would include lawsuits to the offender about the property damage, personal injury, and court-ordered restitution, which would be paid through this to from the offender to the state and then directly to the victims. So arson's a really complex crime, and there can be a lot of complicating factors in this type of crime. Um, the first would be like difficulty determining the cause. Fire destroys a lot of evidence. Were there witnesses? There's got to be special investigations and special skilled investigators to investigate a crime like this. And there also can be multiple causes in a arson. Insurance fraud, super hard to prove. And like, the statistics I gave earlier about the 10%, that's probably that all they could actually prove. Evidence is burned in a fire. And so it makes it even more difficult to prove insurance fraud. There could be mental health issues that could cause some challenges when prosecuting someone in an arson case. And then also, like, the legal challenges. Trying to provide a burden of proof without reasonable doubt can be very difficult, especially when evidence is destroyed. Also, when there's mental health issues involved. And, false accusations and false leads. That can just waste time and resources. So, next, I want to talk a little bit about just criminal theory and arson. So, arson is a complicated crime, and like we said, there's not necessarily one reason that someone commits an arson. So, because of this, there's no right or wrong criminal theory that best explains arson. So, I picked two theories that I felt really aligned with arson and why these kinds of crimes can be committed. The first would be the strain theory. So, um, I think anytime someone is experiencing poverty, unemployment, financial hardship, those stresses can actually put a real strain on someone, and that could lead to committing a crime like this. People that face discrimination and have less access to education, employment, public services, things like that, also put strain on someone that can lead to committing this kind of crime. And, as described in our textbook, Robert Agnew and others developed a more comprehensive perspective called the general strain theory, which individuals commit crimes like this as a coping mechanism to deal with their negative social relationships. The other theory that I think aligns well with arson is the control theory. People that have weak social bonds or feel alienated from society have an increase in control as they don't place as much value on what is acceptable by society. This would also apply to individuals who do not have a strong moral compass or value system. And as our textbook discusses, Travis Hershey cites that when someone has loosened bonds to society, this can create an active internal conflict that easily supply a reservoir of socially derived hostility. And that makes sense to me. So some of the statistics about arson. So, in a 2021 report by the United States Bomb Center data, in their arson incident report, they reported that accidental uh, fire fire type, they had 7,700 accidental fires. Incendiary, which is on purpose, they had 64 reported, 6,400 and some change, and undetermined almost 6,000. You can see by like injuries, there are 372 accidental, but undetermined 337. And fatalities, 249 undetermined fatalities. That's a lot of numbers and a lot of undetermined statistics in arson. And it just goes to show that this is a very complex crime, very hard to prosecute and prove because of all the evidence that's actually just destroyed through a fire. So it's a fact. There are over 500,000 fires set intentionally each year, resulting in 2 billion in property damage. And 50% of all those fires are set by children. That's just staggering to me. So I hope that you learned a little bit about arson and some of the criminal theories that align with arson, and understand, why someone would commit arson from my presentation. And thank you so much for listening.